Now, I was just thinking, that there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. I'm sure we've all heard about this. And we are going to talk about those weeks when decades happen. And I was just thinking about it that, all of us are CFOs. What does a CFO mean? Obviously, Chief Financial Officer. Assume it was an acronym. And what would C stand for? What would F stand for? And what would O stand for? And trying to be relevant to the topic that we're going to discuss. We would also like to participate in that conversation. Thamba, yes, I know that word. Okay, so, no, set it. If you want to set something right, that's fine. Okay, so if we were to think of C, F, and O, what are the words that come to your mind that describes the role of a CFO? And keep the topic in mind. I'd like to first ask the audience here, and it's just a warm-up session. Anybody wants to go for C? When you think of a CFO, what does C stand for? Other than the Chief Financial Officer, other than the word chief? Crisis. Brilliant. Brilliant. There's always a crisis manager. What other words come to your mind? Calculative. In a positive way, I hope. Any other word?
I don't know, competency or something.
Competency के बिना तो बनेगा भी नहीं ना. I hope not. Okay, one last change management. Very good. So it's all about managing crisis, bringing clarity, as the topic also says, and so on and so forth. So we spoke about crisis. We spoke about so many other words. Today we are not here to talk about sunshine. We are here to talk about the rain. And what happens when the roof caves in? What happens when the alarm bell goes off? Those are moments that, as we always say, that they come and go and make you probably a stronger individual and makes you more resilient. And here are a group of panelists who have doused that fire and here to tell the tale, right? So maybe I'll start with Nitin. Nitin, Winston Churchill once said, "Never waste a good crisis." And he was a great guy under pressure. He also said one more thing: when you are going through hell, keep going. So the question that I want to ask you is, has there ever been a situation where you had planned that it will happen in a certain way, but towards the end, or when you launched it, something else happened, but you didn't give up? You continued going through the hell because what follows is heaven. Over to you, Nitin.
You started well. I think a day, in a life of a CFO, there's something or the other. There's a crisis somewhere. And while you were discussing about going through the hell, and while I was going through this topic, I keep on remembering there's so many crises. Every year, you're not able to meet budgets. That's the first crisis. And so I'm going to talk about something which probably is not common to everybody. I think everybody struggles with the budget. The business gives you a budget, somehow they don't meet it, and then at the end of the day, your KRA also includes that, meeting their better targets, and somehow you don't achieve it. So that again is a crisis. But let me talk to you something which really scared me, once. And this was an event when I don't want to name the company, but we are in the process of ERP implementation. This was the time when SAP and other, all ERPs were making big names, and everybody was so interested. Every CFO had a things to do, tick in the box that I want to do an ERP implementation. This is the first ERP implementation for me, and I was part of the team. And the entire team decided one fine morning that we will not do an all India implementation. And
so at the time of initial conceptualization, you thought
so there was
across the country.
Look, ERP can't be at one side or one corner of the room. It has to be one button. Yeah. So somehow and the teams were not experienced enough in the ERP. The first time the group was implementing it, and some senior person decided that let's do only the western part of India, so that once it is implemented, the pilot is right, and then probably we will take it to the other parts of the country. But somehow nobody realized that there are stock transfers which are happening. I'm just taking you all to the days when we had stock transfers, excise, during those times. And somehow we started receiving material in the western region from Delhi and all parts of the world, and we didn't know how to account for an inventory. So I'm sure everybody is an expert in accounting. As soon as you receive the goods, automatic there is an inventory movement, and there is a provision which is created in the books for creditors. And somehow we were like rallying around, and nobody was able to understand. And few of us, like me, in the room, since we were junior, we didn't have the courage to stand up and say, hey, this is something which is seriously wrong. So yeah, that was something which came to my mind when you're talking about the hell and crisis. Yeah.
So extremely interesting topic here, because I'm quite sure many of our members in the audience would have also gone through an ERP. Can you just show by a raise of hands, how many of you have actually gone through an ERP? Okay, quite a few. I had, Nitin, also one such situation. Okay. And I'm tempted, I've written a few quotes, and I'm going to share one of them because it goes very well with this. Experience is what you get when you did not get what you wanted. Experience is what you get when you did not get what you wanted. So sometimes you plan for something, and what actually you end up with is sometimes very different from what you had anticipated. So Nitin, in a similar situation, we also had a situation where we were going for an ERP. And sometimes I'm not shy of sharing failures. We went through an UAT. UAT, as we all know, is user acceptance test, which are the tests you do before you actually launch into an ERP, where you actually go live with ERP. We did once, we did twice. It ran very well. And on the day on which you actually launched it, hell broke loose. As we said, we're not going to talk about sunshine. We're going to talk about roof caving in, right? Everything, hell broke loose, and nothing was functioning. At least आपका बाकी तो चल रहा था, खाली stock transfer नहीं चल रहा था. यहाँ कुछ भी नहीं चल रहा था. And at that point in time, in that crisis, I do remember one of my mentors telling me, stay calm. And I was wondering, how do you stay calm in such a crisis situation? And that was a great learning because, and he said another thing, which I would definitely share here. He said, talk to all your stakeholders. Talk to all your stakeholders. Don't try to give them a rosy picture. Speak the truth. They will be on your side. Your problem is at the moment magnified in your head. When you speak with them, your problem becomes what it is. And trust me, we spoke to all the heads. Initially, one was assuming that everyone would kind of not cooperate. But barring none, everyone cooperated. Everyone very supportive. In fact, everyone started saying, don't worry, it will happen. And that kind of confidence, that kind of courage, and that support is very important in a crisis moment. So one thing definitely in a crisis moment is, how do you manage stakeholder relationship? Because if your stakeholders are not with you during a crisis, that song is there, na? Jodi to dak shune kyu na ashe, tobe akla chalo re. Yahan pe wo akla chalo re nahi chalega. You have to walk with your stakeholders. But Nitin, what did you do after that? So your your things failed, and at that point in time, you have a choice of giving it up or maybe continuing it. What did you do?
So, few of us stood up and took the courage of saying that we should stop this. We stopped the software implementation. We went back to the old system. We ran it parallelly for 3 months till the time both the systems started giving the results, same results. And we also went for an all India implementation rather than only the Western region, because the things were ready, to plug and play. If something is working in the Western region, it has to work in the Northern region as well. We went through the training, as you spoke about the stakeholder engagement. We went through the board. The first one to tell, we told about was the finance team, because they were the first getting impacted. And then, as we engaged with everybody, everybody stood up and supported, because, in the failure, we stood as one team. Even though there were silos, So there were various divisions, there were various segments. And within finance, there were 3 or 4 segments. That's how the accounting was taking place. And I think engagement did help. And the same organization had a code word BNF, which is bad news first. and we actually stood up as a listed company. We went to the board and as a team we said that there was something which went wrong in terms of decision making. We want to correct it. I think they were supportive enough. I think the board went off, out of the box and gave us some good real life examples as well, where we can take parallel help. We brought some big 4, people on the board who actually helped us in syncing the old system and in the new system.
So basically, what I gather from here is that your approach is extremely important. Don't change your approach midway, because if you're changing approach, then you have to tick all the boxes. Stakeholder engagement is extremely important. And very important, you have to break the bad news. Because if you don't break the bad news at an opportune moment, then probably you will have a lot of more things to deal with, which are not preferable. Thank you, Nitin. Abhay, there is a quote here that everyone is a genius in a bull market. By the way, how many of you invest in stocks? Good response. And do you agree everyone is a genius in bull market? Yeah? Even the panwala was giving me a tip during the bull market. Okay? But the fact is, when you talk about bull market, when you talk about stock market, then obviously you're talking about investors, right? And Abhay, my question for you is that in your journey, I'm sure you would be engaging with a lot of investors and therefore a lot of promoters. There is always this, for a lack of better word, tug of war between the investors and the promoters. So was there a situation that you have encountered with either the investors or the promoters that led to a crisis in your head? And if it did, what was the crisis? And if you had one, how did you resolve it?
Okay, so basically to start with, the quote what you said, everybody is expert in a bull market. That is what happens even when we talk about with the investors and everybody. And everybody, even as a promoter, I am so bullish with my company. And even if my numbers are not right, I am always bullish. No, it's at the end of the day, my business, it's doing really good. So this happened with me once in very early stages of my career, although still I am into early stage only, but it happened very early. Just cleared my chartered accountancy and then I started taking up these roles. So as a consulting CFO basically, and I was engaged with one startup wherein I am joining in and they have already given their first pitch deck to the investor. And as soon as I join in, I am going through the pitch deck, I start comparing the financials and everything, and I see there is a huge mismatch. Okay. And then I start feeling what is the mismatch. I speak down the line to the team and everybody, and they say, sir, it's something basically, there are few contracts which have in the pipeline, which will be getting signed in the next month, which we have already booked it as a revenue. It was more of a revenue recognition which was done earlier rather than being booked once realized. So, and then when I spoke to the founders about it, boss, this is not the right way of doing things. Probably we must be honest with our investors as to this is not the right way of going about it. And the investors were like, boss, we are going for a 200 CR round. And if I don't project this kind of a revenue, then the whole deal is going to go for a toss. And this was the kind of talks we were having. And being a new person coming to the company as a CFO, and I was like into a huge dilemma. And when you have just come out of as a CA and you have read, all those things as ethics, and like as in the course curriculum, you study all the ethics and everything. And then you are like, no, yeah, this is not ethical that I'm recognizing my revenue too early and everything. So then what happened was, when I went back home after this, I was like, should I be doing this or not? I was caught into this. So that was the crisis I was caught into. And then next day when I went up, I spoke to the first to my founders in a closed room. Was, yeah, aisa kar rahe ho. This is something, probably you might get this round because of these numbers, but we have to see this not just a startup for getting this one round, but we need to see a broader picture, 2 steps ahead. Next round when I'm going to raise, will my investors have the same trust on me or not, if I want to raise again? And then we spoke about it, and then we finally ended up changing our whole pitch deck as to, this is not a recognized revenue, it's not part of my ARR, this is only a revenue momentum what I'm having. And then what happened was, founders were like, okay, now since you have told this, you go and pitch it to the investors. We are not coming because we don't want to lose our reputation, was their scenario on it. So then I went ahead to the investors. I told them, boss, this is the picture, and there have been some miscommunications from the end, and I want to give you a very clear picture, not to go, when you go into a marriage, you always want that everything is very transparent enough. So that is how even I treat always a promoter and an investor relation as a marriage, where you need to be very transparent and be very clear with what you're doing and what you're not doing. So that is what...
I hope your wife knows everything.
Yes, yes. So that is what happened there. Then I spoke to the investors about it, and they were really happy. And they too had some other doubts on the things like the churn rates and everything were again manipulated. So we gave them a very clear picture, and they were really happier to know that, okay, we are acknowledging what are the problems in the business and working towards it. So it is really important that we present a right picture to the investors. True. Rather than sugarcoating things around it.
So it's a very interesting thing, because what you're saying is that in any relationship, while stakeholder engagement is important, the honesty in the relationship is very important. And even in a crisis moment, when you open up to your investor, they actually back you and support you. But on this note, actually, I'm reminded of a joke, and I'm wondering whether I should share it or not. But please understand, this is for a lighter moment and not something which we stand for. This was way back in 1989 when I started my articleship. And I asked, what does a CA do? So one of my uncles, jokingly, he said, Kuch nahi, he does A, B, C. Does anybody know this? No. He says, CA kya karta hai? Bola, A, B, C. I said, what is A, what is B, what is C? I'm asking you a question and you are saying A, B, C, aap mazak mein uda rahe ho. Bola, nahi. A, actuals. B, what is booked. C, what is cooked. Okay? No wonder we have so many regulations now to make sure we do only A and we don't do ABC. Right? So, I think I completely agree with you, Abhay, that honesty and transparency is extremely important. I've been involved in 2 IPOs as a CFO, and one of the things that I've realized is that when you meet investors, investors are expecting of you one thing. They always, even if your business model is very good, even if you are very skillful, they see whether you have governance standards. And if they don't agree with your governance standards, they will not even invest. So those are important elements, I feel. Okay, Shiva, I have one quote for you also. You shouldn't feel deprived, right? Left out. Okay. So a founder once told me that this was pre-crisis. Okay. Wait, where is it gone? Yeah. I led with vision. Post-crisis. Sorry, pre-crisis, I led with vision. Post-crisis, I led with empathy. Pre-crisis, I led with vision. Post-crisis, I led with empathy. Vision is great, but empathy makes people follow you through fire. So very important, very good words. Vision is great, but empathy makes people follow you through fire. So Shiva, people are very relevant in any business. Do you recall of any crisis that you had with people around, or where you had to deal with a lot of people and you were in a dilemma?
Very, very interesting situation. Probably early in my career when as a CFO, I did a lot of acquisitions, setting up, merging the businesses, and so on and so forth. It was like a growth oriented, you are going absolutely gung-ho on your career as such. Imagine a situation where you are dealing with a company, meeting all operational parameters, profitability best in the class, flushing with capital, absolutely wonderful appraisal for the entire management and team. I mean, jaw-dropping payout when it comes to bonus and everything. I mean, healthy pipeline, order book is also there as such. What can go wrong? Despite company having all this success, the company was into an existential crisis. There was a deep misalignment with primary investors on the long-term vision of the company. Now, in the absence of getting a middle ground, board was compelled, or what you say, board took a painful, unanimous decision to wind down the company. Wind down the company in obviously a very controlled and what you say, orderly manner as such. Now, this was the first time in my career where I was in a situation where, for no fault of any team members, for no fault of any performance, still I have to go through the process, and what I have not done in the past, I was always setting it up, now I was winding it down. I mean, all learning coming together, but in a completely different way. The first thing basically that was required at that point in time was not to lead by numbers, because numbers to bahut achhe the hamare, but to lead by people. So a cross-functional war room was created with HR, legal, ops, everyone. And obviously the discussion was not why. The discussion was how do we plan this communication and transition in a very fair and transparent manner as such. One thing which was very critical at that point in time and became these filters were applied for every action. First one, what truly impacts people? Second, what really impacts the reputation? Because I was dealing with two large players in the industry as such, who were the investors as such. Now, one of the things which came across is that when you deal in this kind of a situation, you are not dealing with people per se, you are dealing with the livelihood. There is a family, maybe a 4-member family or a 2-member family. What happens to that? Because there are all sentiments and emotions. And probably as a finance guy, you will always do a scenario analysis, break even, ye, wo, and all those stuff. But here you are dealing with emotions at first hand. Every person, in fact, I remember a situation where a employee came with his parents, where his parents trying to convince, इससे क्या गलती हो गया, इसको संभाल लो. Abhi, the point is not that basically an individual is at flaw. The point is that basically you have to wind down the company as such. Obviously, to the extent possible, what you say, approval was sought from the investors in a manner where you outplace them, absorb in your other portfolio companies, try to put it in your basically in any other operating companies. If not, do an industry benchmark of severance, get them a number basically that will help them to sustain a period of time till basically they get another employment kind of a stuff, because none of the guys were non-competent. The situation was such that basically we have to let go as such. Then the hardest decision came. Time versus money. Board gave a mandate, 30 days mein khatam karo. Now, to convince them that let us do it in a very orderly, structured manner, 30 days is a rush. Any rush exit will not help you on your reputation or a culture which you build over a period of time as such. To convince this board that this extra 60 days is not a burn, but it is a brand investment. Saying that how this will help you in protecting your reputation in the market, at the same time basically giving a very soft landing for employees. At the same time also basically putting the PR and the media at bay, that nobody basically makes any noise on this front as such. Well, probably they agreed. Then came how to align all the unaligned stakeholders, because each stakeholder was having a conflicting objectives. To investor, the best way was basically to prepare a scenario-based financial model, try to give him various scenarios like exit payoffs versus liability, legal risk, ye sab hoga, to convince them on that front. To the board, who generally wants an update, prepare a state-of-art dashboard, give them a weekly update with various red, green, amber signals on the wind down plan as to how the KPIs are progressing on the wind downs with all those signals. To the employees, have a one-on-one HR support, gave them basically a resume workshop, gave them basically opportunities to speak to other vendors and all those stuff to see how you are placing them and all those stuff. Eventually the narrative basically we changed it from a shutdown to a transition. What came out very
and in
clearly,
the process you bought time.
Yeah, we could complete everything in 2 months. By 2 months, all the operations were done, all vendors were paid, and investors acknowledged the dignity of the process that was followed subsequently as such. But what came out very clearly is that transparency builds trust, and trust reduces friction. That came out really very clearly in this process as such. As a final meltdown, basically, we did tying up all the loose ends, archiving all the documentations, ensuring that from an audit compliance perspective, you are creating enough repository so that you are not prone to any future risk as such. But when I sit back today and do a reflection, probably this was the first time in my career where there were 4 distinct learnings for me. Learning number 1, crisis basically creates probably a personality as such. Numbers matters, but how you deal with the people impacts the long run. Because these people reached out to me subsequently where they were placed, that whether they want to basically work with me again or not, and it created that branding as such.
True. So basically, there are a lot of intangibles that get created. There are this brand recall that is being created.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all.